The game that a lot of people probably thought they were never going to see, right? One, Jayden Daniels playing the way that he has this year to accelerate the rebuild for Washington, not just making the playoffs, but going into Tampa Bay and beating the Buccaneers. Then going to Detroit, and everybody goes, hey, great year, great story for Washington, really root for them, but, it's the Lions, right? Well, they were absolutely fearless. They go into Detroit and beat that team 45-31. The top 5 graded players that we have for the Washington Commanders, running back Austin Eckler at the very top of the list with a 90.8 with some key plays in this game. Defensive tackle John Allen an 80.5. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin a 77.7. Safety Quan Martin a 75.6 for that pick six. Wide receiver Jamison Crowder a 73.9. And then quarterback Jayden Daniels a 79.9. On the Lions side of things, safety Brian Branch with a 92.9. Guard Christian Mahogany a 92.2. Offensive tackle Penei Sewell a 90.1. Wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown at an 80.3. And then running back Jahmyr Gibbs rounding us out at number 5 with a 78.9. Jared Goff in this game, just a 45.5 overall grade. Stat that told the story here. What do we got?
Boy, I get to talk about Jayden Daniels
Your
for
favorite.
one more week. For
Your
one
favorite.
more week, I get to talk about QB1. I absolutely love it.
Might be a couple more weeks, actually, depending on what happens next week. We'll see.
Don't think we've never had a rookie starter in the Super Bowl. Is that right? Is he going to just pull another first?
I don't know. And you know where the Super Bowl is this year.
Oh.
Ain't too far from Baton Rouge.
You're going to get every LSU Tiger.
Ain't too far from Baton Rouge.
That's true.
In New Orleans.
Man, oh man. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I'm just saying it out. I'm not accounting.
So here's where I was at with the Commanders, both against the Bucs and against the Lions. How effective were they going to be when teams started blitzing them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that was a concern for me. And I told you I thought Todd Bowles did not blitz Jayden Daniels enough in big moments, especially on 3rd and 4th down. Now I'm going into this week knowing that, what is it? I think it's since week 10, they were the second worst team in pass protection against the blitz, okay, through wild card weekend. From week 10 to wild card weekend, only ahead of the Bengals. So I'm coming in here thinking, okay, Aaron Glenn's going to come out and blitz him. And he did. He blitzed him on 47% of his dropbacks. Well, he responded by going 12 of 15 for 200 yards, a touchdown, the big-time throw to De'Ami Brown, which was just, one of the best balls I've seen thrown all year because Brown was blindfolded at the very end of that, and the ball just dropped right in the bucket anyway. 89.9 passing grade against the blitz in this game. How many ways can Jayden Daniels just wow us? And, we know the running. We know he's accurate. We know he's got a top 5 turnover-worthy play rate. Now I'm concerned, okay, late in the season, teams are starting to blitz the living hell out of Washington. And it's starting to work because even if you're not forcing him into big mistakes, which he rarely makes, it's more conservative, right? It's like screens and it's 4-yard passes. And this became a very conservative offense down the stretch. They started making explosive plays in this game. And as a whole team, look, even their offensive line, 63.2 pass blocking grade against the blitz. It's their best since week 9. They were picking up blitzes. Jayden's throwing against them. As a unit, okay, the whole team, the whole offense, for a team, this is run and pass now. 182 times that an offense has been blitzed at least 20 times in a game this year, okay, run and pass. The Commanders put up the second best team offense grade of any of those 182 in this game. This is what it came down to. So now I'm like, okay, they have answers for blitzes. Deep balls are working. The screen to Terry McLaurin, which I know he's fast. I don't know that I've ever seen him that fast.
That was as fast as it gets.
If they have answers for blitzes now, and the Eagles aren't a high blitzing team, so it'll be different next week. If they have answers for blitzes now, then I just go, okay, this is just legitimate. They could go out here and win next week, even if Vic Fangio tries to change it up and put extra guys on the line of scrimmage, because he started doing that to Stafford in today's game, right? Mm-hmm. Throwing some extra guys with some zero blitzes late in the game. If they start picking up blitzes, and obviously it gets harder now that Sam Cosmi's torn his ACL over there at right guard, you're not going to have him. You're just going to get in a shootout with this team. That's where we're at, and that's what the Lions found themselves in. And every time now, because we got to halftime, and this game was 31-21, coming off 2 Goff interceptions. And in my head, I'm like, okay, the blitzes aren't getting home. But the Lions also can't get home with 4. So now I don't know what the answer is, because Jayden Daniels is going to get through this whole game just completely undeterred. And if he's like that, this is what this offense can do. When he's been clean, they've been a top 5 offense all year. And obviously him being at the center of it, now we got the offensive line blocking better. We got guys on the outside making plays. How big has De'Ami Brown been these 2 games? Austin Eckler stepping up. They got a lot of answers right now offensively. And now it's a fun challenge now for a team that I know Jalen Hurts came out of that game early, but they've beaten Philly once.
Right.
And they got to feel good about coming off of just beating Detroit in Detroit. Now they've already beaten Philly once. They have to feel like they have a legit chance. But as always, reason number 1 is because of Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, you're running out of ways to do a preview show of how do you stop Jayden Daniels? We're running out of ways to say how you do it. Because before it was like, all right, well, you want to make him throw over the middle. Okay, well, now he throws over the middle. Or actually, at the beginning of the season, it was, okay, you want to get him on the run because even though he's mobile, he's not really a great on-the-run passer. At least he wasn't when he was at LSU. Okay, well, he checked that box pretty early on, especially after the Tampa game in week 1. Then he starts to throw over the middle more. Now you've got him attacking in basically every single way. He'll attack man coverage. We saw in the first playoff game against the Buccaneers. I mean, that in the bucket throw that he had over Jamel Dean just straight into the hands of Terry McLaurin. I mean, it's basically Jayden's the only one to slow down Jayden Daniels at this point. If he's playing like this, hell yeah, they can beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Hell yeah, they can go win the Super Bowl. Because I don't know how you stop this player, especially when you pair it with the stat that told the story for me, and that's the Commanders' aggressiveness on 4th down. This is the identity of the team. And when you pair how aggressive this team is in the red zone and on 4th down with how well their quarterback is playing, there ain't many teams that can keep up. There's really not. So in this game, 3 for 4 on 4th down against the Detroit Lions. They have an 81.25 conversion percentage on 4th down this season. They have a 92.4 offensive grade on 4th down. It's the best in the NFL. These are bonkers numbers. You're talking about wanting to go for it on 4th down when it's a coin flip. When you convince yourself, okay, just once out of every 2 times, we'll get it. And that's enough for the math to make sense to where you could go for it. Obviously, situations sort of go into it. Okay, what part of the field, what's the risk versus what the other team's going to do. I understand there's more math that goes into it. But if you think it's a coin flip that we get this or not, a lot of times you go, all right, I'll take it. I'll take my guys in a coin flip situation. They're converting on over 80% of the 4th downs. And not only do they convert them at a high clip, they go for it a lot. They're extremely aggressive. And it's very easy to be aggressive. Sean McDermott, are you paying attention? When you have a quarterback that gives you this type of ability. If I'm a defense, I'm terrified to play against Jayden Daniels for 4 downs. It's enough to play against him for 3. So to me, the recipe of why this team is here is because they understand exactly who they are as a football team. They know what their strengths are, but they also know their weaknesses. The signs of a really good head coach is one that not only understands what they bring to the table as a team, but also where they fall short. And Dan Quinn, as a defensive guy, knows, hey, I got some dogs on defense. We did a nice job turning the page from what the roster was the year before. We're not quite there yet. We don't have a get-home pass rusher yet. We don't have a stout, there's no chance you have at running the ball on us type of a defense. We don't have lockdown corners or secondary players at every spot yet. He gets that. So in order to counter that, he goes, I got one of the best players in the world playing quarterback this year, certainly. I'm not ready to say that he's, quite in the tier 1 of quarterbacks yet, but he's certainly playing like a guy who's been unstoppable this season. And he says, I'm leaning into that. That is actually how we play better defense. That is actually how we defend teams better, by keeping our offense on the field, by giving this guy a chance every single time he has it. So for any situation that is questionable at all for them to go for it on 4th down, you better believe they're going to go for it. And you know what? It's the right damn decision. And they're here because of that mindset. So that's the stat that tells the story for me, not just for the reason why they were able to go into Detroit and beat Detroit, which would have been impressive enough, but the whole fact of how they are here and the fact that they're now playing a familiar foe and have a chance to go to the Super Bowl after a year where, man, it looked like it was going to be a couple of years down the road for Washington to even be in this spot in the playoffs. It's because of that mindset that I have. And it's a great job that entire coaching staff, again, of recognizing not just what they do well, but also what they don't, and being able to marry that together.
I just have to wonder at some point, just once this year, it's sometime down this stretch, if Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury have looked at each other and just kind of asked, like, do we actually trust this kid this much? I mean, you have to. He's played like a top 5 quarterback this year, right? But it's like, this is crazy. The amount that, I mean, and they talk about, the money downs, right? 3rd and 4th down and red zone and short yardage and all of the big moments that young kids have to get used to. And he's already elite at all of it now. We really never have seen anything like this. And the amount that's the crazy part to me. The amount that they trust him in spots like this, knowing that he's their best player. I mean, I have to wonder if at any point it's made them uncomfortable, if they're really just like, you know what? He's already this good. Whatever. I mean, it's amazing. And then him also, I think what gets lost with him too, and because he's loose, and people say he goes out there and he gets hit sometimes funny and he takes big hits, and he's as fiery a competitor. Maybe not outwardly, because he's always just got that grin on his face on the field that would scare the hell out of me, actually. Right. But like, he's such a competitor. He gives everything he has for 60 minutes. And I think when you have a guy that does that and believes he can win in any situation, in any building, against any team, that's everything you could ever ask for in a quarterback. And at this point, I mean, who are we to say he can't do the unthinkable at this point? Because honestly,
I think he already has in a lot of ways.
I go into this next game, and I know Jalen Hurts has made a Super Bowl and he's done a lot of things in the league, but the Eagles, probably every other spot on Philadelphia's roster, you'd give them the advantage. Washington has the better quarterback in this game.
Yep, I would agree.
Especially the way Hurts is throwing the ball lately. And when you have an advantage at quarterback,
you always have a chance to win.
It can equalize everything else.
Always, especially everything that Jayden brings to the table. Most impressive in this game, shouting out Christian Mahogany, the offensive lineman for the Detroit Lions, 91.9 run blocking grade and a 31.8 impact run blocking percentage. He was somebody who I liked in the draft, but I felt as though with his style of just a bigger, powerful, not as flexible, not as fleet of foot type of an offensive lineman, where he landed was always going to matter for him. He lands with a smash mouth team like the Detroit Lions, and it was a perfect fit. And for a interior offensive line that's got Kevin Zeitler and Graham Glass now, and those guys are 32 and older, to have Christian Mahogany to be like, all right, we got this guy waiting in the wings. Here we go. He's going to be able to fill in whenever. It was a great game from him. And so for him to break out like that, I mean, he's been able to play well at certain points throughout the season. But it was a really great game for him to – I know they didn't want to end their season here, but you guys know what I mean. It was a good game for Christian Mahogany.
I think
you're most impressive.
Wasn't he a guy you had? He went in the 6th, but didn't you have somewhere around a 3rd round grade on him?
Way higher.
Yeah. And I remember when we saw them take him, we're like –
no idea why.
It's kind of late.
No
what are we
idea
doing?
Why. I think he – again, I think that he was drafted as late as he was because he – at Boston College, like, he very clearly had strengths and weaknesses. The strengths were power run game, man gap concepts between the tackles, counter, power, pulling, that kinds of stuff, duo, all of that. Like, that's where he's at his best. If you're asking him to mid and outside zone, it's not really his game. So even for teams that are more of the majority of their plays are man and gap scheme blocking concepts, you still have to throw some zone stuff in there. So I think teams were just afraid, like, okay, well, we know what we have from him between the trenches. What do we get from him when we switch it up even a little bit and go to those zone blocking scheme runs? And obviously it's a great spot that he lands in Detroit.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with another rookie as mine, and I'll tell you what, we've talked enough about Jayden, but you have to like this whole rookie class for Washington, and a guy who I think was the next guy. I think he was 6. He just barely missed that top 5 for the Commanders here. Mike Sainristil on the outside.
Stud.
I'll tell you what, going back and watching that first interception when he undercut Jamison Williams on the post right before halftime, when I first watched it, I was like, what is Jared Goff doing? That ball was so late and so under and whatever. And then I watched it again on the All-22. I was like, that is just an insane play by Sainristil to undercut a ball like that. And it was back and forth with him and Jamison Williams because Jamison was getting by him. It was a speed advantage there. But 2 interceptions in this game, 5 targets, 2 catches allowed for 32 yards, 74 coverage grade. And the thing I go back to, there's 2 things with Sainristil. And really the way this whole Washington team is built is not only have they brought in good football players, They brought in leaders, okay? Jayden Daniels. Then I think about some veteran guys, right? Bobby Wagner, one of the great leaders of the last decade on defense. Guys like, Austin Eckler, like you mentioned, been around a long time. And Tyler Biadasz for the Cowboys. And Sainristil, even as a young kid, is one of those guys. Because at Michigan last year, so many incredible NFL talents on that team. Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant we're going to talk about. And Will Johnson this year. Junior Colson got drafted. So many guys on that defense, but Mike Sainristil was the heart and soul of it, right?
Yeah.
And the craziest part of this whole adjustment is that he's played over 80% of his snaps this season on the outside corner. That wasn't the plan at all. It was supposed to be, okay, maybe Emmanuel Forbes will get better. We got some other guys outside. He played almost 72% of his college snaps in the slot after transitioning over from wide receiver,
right.
mind you. So
right.
he moves to corner. They put him in the slot. The only time he really played outside at Michigan is if somebody else, usually Will Johnson, had an injury or they needed to rotate out. And he's come in and he's just, sometimes at the sacrifice of his own numbers goes, well, Dan Quinn goes to him and says, look, Mikey, I need somebody outside. We're a mess. We're a train wreck on the outside. And, they traded for Marshawn Lattimore, but he was hurt for a lot of this stint. And Sainristil goes out there, and he's just an absolute dog. He just is one of the most competitive guys on the field. And for him to get 2 interceptions and really the 2 plays that you could argue were 2 of the 3 or 4 biggest plays in this game. The interception right before halftime, when the Lions, had they put up points on that drive, and it was 31-24 or 31-28, you had a real ball game still. And then, the awareness on the trick play with the Jamison Williams throw that he intercepted to sit back and be disciplined and not fall for anything, even though Williams had already housed a reverse earlier in the game. Just an excellent football player that's going to be a leader on this defense for a long time. And his 2 interceptions, the Quan Martin pick 6 obviously was a huge turning point in this game, but Sainristil's 2 picks and his performance all year, even though his grades for the year in like the low to mid 60s, he's been so valuable for them moving outside and just going, okay, yeah, I guess that's just my job this year and we'll figure it out. We'll figure out the rest later, even though I'm really a slot guy.
Right.
Just incredible, again, what they're getting out of this whole rookie class.
Yep, I've loved it. Most disappointing, Jared Goff. One of us has to talk about it here. 23 for 40 in this game, 313 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, 44.3 passing grade, 2 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. It sucks. I don't think Jared Goff's a tier 1 or tier 2 quarterback in this league, but he's better than what we saw this weekend. This was one of his worst games that we have seen since the beginning part of the year, where they were struggling through the first couple of weeks when they struggled a little bit out of the gate. He's been great with Ben Johnson over the last couple of years. And just like I talked about when I was talking about the Bills and the Chiefs, like, you want these teams at their best. And this was not the best from Detroit. And I think that's what makes it sting so hard, is that on offense, this was not their best. I think their quarterback played one of the worst games that he's played all season. And then on the defensive side of things for Detroit, often in this game, in this league, getting to the Super Bowl is sometimes who just survives the season better. And there are very few teams that survive the season less than the Detroit Lions did. And that just, it sucks. So we're going to look back on this team and think, what if with a lot of these injuries? And even without the injuries, if Goff doesn't play one of the worst games that he has played this year, maybe this story is a little bit different. So it's the most disappointing there, because even if you're not the biggest believer in Jared Goff, this was one of the worst games that he's played, even to the standards that we have seen this so far this season from him, and really over the last couple of years. So that's a disappointing part of it, is a really good team in Detroit just did not put their best foot forward in this game, even to give as much kudos as we do to Washington.
And the fear was, among all the mountain of injuries that they had, because there was a mountain of them. What is it, at one point, 13 defensive players were on IR, I think? I think it was 13.
I think 12 guys who had been starters for them on defense were out at some point this year.
But there's one that stands above the rest of them.
Of course.
And, of course, it's Aiden Hutchinson. When you consider the first 6 weeks, the 6 games that Hutchinson played in, the Lions had the best pass rush grade in football. Obviously, he's the biggest part of that. He was on his way to winning Defensive Player of the Year. He was going to do it had he played the whole season. Since he went out, since Week 7, 27th in this game, 52.1 pass rush grade, their second worst of the season. No sacks, not a single player with a pass rush grade above 70. At the end of it all, if it didn't get him this week, the Hutchinson injury alone probably, and it was a thought at the time that was the fear, probably cost them a shot to win a Super Bowl. Because the pass rush, they was so dependent on him, and there was too many games. After the Zadarius Smith trade, there was a couple of games where they showed a pulse, but it was just nowhere close to the same production. And in this game against Daniels throwing the ball the way he's throwing right now, against an offensive line that's not particularly great, you have to be able to get pressure. If you don't get any pressure at all on quarterbacks in the playoffs, you're not going to have much of a chance.
Yep. It's tough. This Lions team has been so much fun to watch over the last 2 years. And again, it's always a bummer when only one team can win, right? I mean, it's the beauty of this game of sports is that only one team can win. But it sucks when you get to the playoffs and one of those teams does not put forth the best effort they possibly can. And unfortunately, that was Detroit's story in a handful of ways. That's why Washington's moving on. But we talked about why that's exciting. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below. So if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.